All right, we are going to go ahead and get started with our business meeting for September 8th. We're going to call the meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. Mr. Gaskins, if you would, in Dr. Thomas's absence, do roll call for us.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hensley? Here. Ms. Gallagher?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Yeager?
Here.
Dr. Dykeman?
Here.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Gant?
Here.
Ms. Hull?
Here.
And Dr. Maddox?
Here.
All right, thank you. So we do have a quorum. We're going to move forward with item C, and that is the pledge and silent meditation. We will first start with a moment of silence. All right, thank you. If you're able, if you would join us for the pledge. Stand and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We are going to move forward to item 2, and that is our, the first thing under that is our district recognitions. Mr. Gaskins?
Yes, ma'am. I will turn it over to Dr. Cindy Moore, who will lead us in our district recognitions.
Good evening, Dr. Gant and board members. We have a few recognitions tonight celebrating some of our terrific staff, starting with the return of our Employee of the Month recognition. Our Employee of the Month for September is Ms. Valerie Moment, receptionist at Winterville Elementary School. Ms. Moment is celebrating 20 years with CCSD, all at Winterville Elementary School, where she started out as a paraprofessional before moving over to receptionist earlier this year. This afternoon, CCSD staff made a trip over to surprise her, and we are thrilled to be joined by her tonight, even though she had other plans. She postponed them so she could be with us. If you're meeting Ms. Moment for the first time, her love for Winterville Elementary and the Winterville community really comes through. She says her favorite thing about Winterville is the people, and she will do anything to help out anybody. That was the impression she left at the school's back-to-school orientation on a first-year Winterville Elementary parent who nominated her for this award. And we think that's particularly important when a parent takes time to nominate an employee. When there was a mix-up on the class roster and the parent's child's name wasn't listed, Ms. Moment was there in the front office to help. Here is part of that nomination story. Ms. Moment was so kind and welcoming. She told us all about how long she'd worked there and what a great place it was. She really made sure we were comfortable and at ease and was just so kind. She really made an intense day so much easier for the kids and for me by reassuring and welcoming us in. It was really nice for our first impression of the school to be that it's a welcoming, kind, and reassuring place. First-year Winterville principal Dr. Carletha Pearson shared a similar recollection of her first interaction with Ms. Moment. Mrs. Moment was the first person to welcome me to Winterville Elementary. She sent me the nicest email. When I read her message, I thought to myself, this is a very special person with the purest of hearts. My thoughts were confirmed when we officially met. Mrs. Moment is the sweetest, kindest, and most helpful woman. She will do all that she can to help others. She is encouraging, she is positive, she is a true gem at Winterville Elementary School. We are so grateful to have her with us. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Moment. I'll ask Dr. Pearson. Dr. Pearson, if you would join her. We're going to present her, and I'd like the board to come down if you wish to have your picture taken with this exceptional person. The most important words I think I heard there were kind. And isn't that so important to teach our children? Now, we told Mrs. Moment, while everybody's coming down, that she wouldn't get her prizes unless she came tonight. And I promised her the prizes would be worth it. We would like to thank the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as several individual businesses for donating wonderful gifts tonight. When you go home, you're going to have quite the time. So, Scott, Alex, if you will present these. You want to take it up? You take it up. She'd rather.
Yeah,
Oh, you've got to get the photo.
Yes.
Scoot, scoot. Thank you. Now, board, you might just want to stay right there. We've got one more to keep you from going back and forth. But congratulations again, and thank you to the Athens Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Moment, take some pictures of you opening those things and send them to me, okay? You can find more information about our Employee of the Month program on our website, so I encourage you all to go there and take a moment to nominate somebody that you feel has done an exceptional job. Next tonight, we'd like to recognize Barrow Elementary teacher, Mr. Keith Weaver. Earlier this year, Mr. Weaver was selected by the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers as a 2022 Georgia STEM Scholar Award recipient for his efforts in engaging and improving learning among students in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. As part of this recognition, Mr. Weaver received a $500 grant to purchase STEM education materials for his classroom. Headquartered at Kennesaw State University, GYSTC is a nonprofit aimed at increasing student interest in and enthusiasm for STEM studies in grades K through 8. Tonight, we are joined by Amanda Bice, GYSTC Executive Director, Will Dodd, our local Oconee River GYSTC Coordinator, and their board chair, Susan Daniel of Johnson & Johnson, as they present Mr. Weaver with his physical award. At this time, I'd like to invite Amanda up to speak, and Mr. Weaver, if you'll come up, we'll present you at that, and then we'll take another photo.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Bice.
Yes.
And we are a nonprofit. We have 11 programs and centers across the state of Georgia. And this is a competition we do every year for the whole state of Georgia for any teacher of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics K-8. Unfortunately, we can only recognize about the top 20 to 25. And so it is my delight and honor that Mr. Weaver is one of our FY22 STEM scholars. He is among an elite group and well-deserving. One of the things our organization does is try to promote interest and enthusiasm in STEM. And we do that by having awards such as this and doing other programming. I'm joined tonight by your regional coordinator, Will Dodd, and his board chair, Susan Daniel of Johnson & Johnson. I'd like to thank our business partners because it really is a partnership between schools, higher ed, and business and industry.
Johnson & Johnson has two facilities here in Athens, Georgia, a Janssen site and an Ethicon site, and we fully support the Oconee River GYSTC and volunteer as often as we can. I personally am a scientist that was homegrown here in Georgia. I do have global responsibilities in microbiology in the pharmaceutical sector of Johnson & Johnson now, and I have my elementary school science teachers to appreciate, to thank for my appreciation of science today. We find often that young students, particularly females, opt out of science in the earliest years. So we are eternally grateful for educators like Mr. Weaver that keep them engaged and enthusiastic all year long. So congratulations and thank you all. Will?
Well, as the regional coordinator, I just want to say how much I have had the thrill, or been thrilled, to be able to work personally with Mr. Keith Weaver in professional learnings and learning materials and hosting STEM nights. Making STEM concepts accessible to all the students in the elementary school, especially those who may not be successful in other subjects, can really get a big bump in your classroom and be successful there. And when you're competing for popularity with PE and doing a great job, that speaks volumes about the way that you engage students. So I am thrilled to award you as one of the 2022 Georgia STEM Scholar Award winners. Should we step up there and give it to him? Yes. Let's do it. Follow me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, we'd like to recognize more than a dozen of our teachers and staff members who were recipients of the 2022 FFE Teaching and Staff Awards. And we'll bring them to you for this picture because there are a good number of them. For those of you who don't know, the Foundation of Excellence in Public Education in Clark County is a nonprofit whose mission is to encourage, recognize, and reward excellence in the Clark County School District. FFE representatives spent one morning during pre-planning week just before the start of school, traveling across the district to present the 2022 awards to 15 teachers and staff members at 6 of our schools who were nominated by their colleagues, parents, and community members. Tonight, we are joined by FFE Executive Director, Catherine Neese, and we'd like to invite her up to talk a little bit more about the organization and introduce our winners.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Neese, and I'm the Executive Director for the Foundation for Excellence in Public Education here in Clark County. I would like to thank the board. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present these award winners before you today. Like Dr. Moore said, the Foundation for Excellence is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we work in partnership with the Clark County School District. We do not actually work for the school district, we just work very closely with the school district. For almost 40 years, the FFE has been recognizing excellence and dedication amongst the educators and staff within Clark County. We do this by awarding teaching, staff, and student awards and classroom grants in the Clark County School District during the school year. By the end of this year, 2022, we would have awarded over $31,000 to deserving teachers, staff, and students only in Clark County School District. This past spring, we did an all-call to the community seeking nominations for our teaching and staff awards. We received 140 nominations, and of those nominations, our community volunteers chose 15 award winners. These 15 winners exemplify excellence and dedication to their Clark County students, school, and the community. You are about to meet some of the best of the best. And while not all of our winners are here this evening, we will celebrate them nonetheless, and we will let you know who they are as well. The winners here today have brought their loved ones and their principals, and we thank them for taking the time today to come out and please to recognize their loved ones. So I would like to introduce you to our 2022 Foundation for Excellence Teaching and Staff Award winners. Now, some of our winners actually already received their little desk plates. And some are going to have to receive theirs later because we discovered spelling errors on those. So sorry about that. The Frida M. Thomas Teacher of Promise Award is awarded to teachers who are within their first couple of years of teaching. And those winners are Levi Carr from Clark Central High School and William Lowe from Cedar Falls High School. The Burtis Downs District Services Awards is LaShonda Calloway from Hillsman Middle School and Margaret Smith from Howard B. Stroud Elementary School. The Howard B. Stroud Community Service Award, Hannah Nelson from Howard B. Stroud Elementary. The Michael Peter Horvat Secondary Coaches Award goes to Josh Campbell from Cedar Falls High School. Friends of Eve Carson Excellence in Teaching Award to Janice Stephen from Howard B. Stroud Elementary. The Newland Family Foundation Excellence in Teaching Award to Lauren Benbrook of Howard B. Stroud Elementary. The Walter Allen Senior Inspiring Teacher Award to Mark Ginsburg of Cedar Falls High School. The Gallus Family Award for Teachers of History and Social Studies, Mr. Andrew Weaver from Clark Central High School. The Prasanna S. Booth Chair for Teachers of English and Language Arts to Jennifer Tessler of Clark Central High School. The Charlotte Brown Chair for Teachers of Special Education, Sharissa Swan of Clark Middle. The Lamar Dodd Chair for Teachers of Fine Arts, Rosemary Millsap, Cedar Shoals High School. The Jenny Penny Oliver Chair for Counselors and Student Supports Personnel, Lauren McElhannon, David C. Barrow, Elementary School. The Margaret and Raymond Ponsall Chair for Elementary School Teachers, Bertina Hunt from Howard B. Stroud Elementary. I'm enthusiastic in introducing to you, all of you, our 2022 FFE Award winners. Thank you.
Thank you all. That concludes our recognitions for this evening. I think that everyone here will agree with me when I say today has been a great day to be part of Clark County School District. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations again to all of our awardees. We are going to move forward to item B, and that is board announcements. Are there any board announcements that we have?
Just, sorry I wasn't here last week for the work session. I did watch you guys, and thank you. It was very informative and almost brief. But I was in Tuscaloosa on the inner city trip with the chamber and several other people in the community, and I'm looking forward to being able to give you a trip report and perhaps have a conversation to debrief some of the extraordinary things that are happening in the field of education, especially around workforce development.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I only heard part of that. Did you say we can follow up for more conversation, or there's information that you'll send out?
I'm going to send out a trip report, and upon receipt of that, if there's a conversation that we should have, I'd hope that we would do that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that information, and thank you for attending on behalf of the board. Other announcements? All right, we'll move forward to public comment. Okay, so confirming that we do not have public comment tonight. We'll move forward to number 4, which is to amend and or adopt the agenda. The floor is open.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hull, a second by Dr. Yeager. Any follow-up questions or discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda as printed, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. That motion carries 9-0. So our agenda is listed before us. The next item is the board president report. I don't have any additional items, but I have asked Dr. Anderson just to give us an update about the Board Advisory Council. So last week we tossed around some things and suggestions, and we did have a chance to meet, and so I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Dr. Anderson.
So this is included in an email that went out at about 4:15 this afternoon. So if you did not have time to read it, it's absolutely okay. So we did meet with Dr. Hooker as well as Dr. Thomas to kind of establish how to best move forward. And some of the things that we talked about was, one, making sure that we send out public information through our PR office about meetings with the Board Advisory Council and inviting the public to attend those meetings just like they can attend any other open records meeting. So we'll try to heavily publicize those meetings. We have determined that maintaining quarterly meetings for now just makes a lot more sense in terms of just the administration of this group and trying to coordinate the activities of this group. It just made more sense to maintain quarterly meetings. Rather than having 3 regular members attend every single quarterly meeting, we will rotate and have 3 members attend each meeting. We will make a Google Sheet or whatever, and just make sure that you sign up once we've established the meetings that will happen quarterly for this year. Just make sure that you sign up for at least one of them, and we have 3 members present for each of those meetings. And if we can have one person assign themselves as a reporter to report back during our work sessions what took place in that meeting, that would help us get that information in a more timely manner and also just more digestible, and then also help send that information out to the community. And then lastly, we are going to, or Dr. Hooker and Dr. Thomas will, Superintendent Thomas will follow back up with Cognia to have a discussion with them about what the role of this council, since this was a call from Cognia, what role this council should have and what are the best practices for the administration and involvement of this council. Particularly because there is not really a standard for this right now in the state. So we just need a little bit better information as to how we engage this council so that we can do it in a manner that is fit for Cognia. So they will report back to us in a month or so and let us know what that conversation led to. And that's it.
So is there precedence? Are there other boards that have this arrangement? Is that one of the questions that we're asking them as well? Okay.
I believe that question's actually already been asked before to Cognia, and there is not a precedent in the state for other boards to have this sort of council. There are things like town hall meetings and other regular ways to engage community members and stakeholders. For example, we do our World Cafe that I would love to see us do again, or do annually or quarterly. There are other ways that, boards around the state engage their community and stakeholders. This is not a standard as far as Cognia and accreditation is concerned. This was a call for us specifically. And so that we can tell, there's no established format for how this council operates as a part of, we already have parent advisory board, teacher advisory board, student advisory board. I mean, we've got a lot of different members of the community that participate in boards and councils, so this is just new, and we need more direction.
Well, I will say that reading the minutes from the meetings was very enlightening and very informative and affirming, I would say, because that they really do have the pulse on, their fingers on the pulse of the things that I've been hearing in the community. So I felt like that was a very worthwhile experience and exposure, but the minutes were very meaningful as well in terms of affirming where we're going. So very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that update. We'll move forward. Mr. Gaskins with the superintendent report.
No report at this time.
All right, thank you. We're going to move forward to our consent agenda. This is item 7. Last week we had a conversation about these things, and I am going to open the floor for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Dr. Dykeman and a second by Dr. Maddox. Any follow-up questions or conversation? All right, all in favor of adopting the consent agenda, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same signs? Okay, that motion carries 9-0. Number 8, these are items that we pulled and items for individual action. The first one is the Georgia Conflict Center. Mr. Gaskins, I know there is some updated information that we received, and I think board members received, and so just wanted to at least note that here. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
Could I make a motion that we table this particular item?
Mm-hmm. Yep, until
after they've had an opportunity to present to the board in November. This seems like putting the cart before the horse.
If you make the motion, did you make the motion?
I did.
I second.
Can I ask for clarity? You said move it to November, and then you said something after that for?
What they are scheduled to present
For the
to the board
presentation.
in November.
Okay.
And so I would like to move that we table this vote until after that presentation occurs.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a clarifying question? Is there any impact on the program if we delay for a month?
It would prevent those schools that have elected to use the conflict center for using it until it is approved by the board. So to my knowledge, and I'll ask Dr. Scott if she needs to step in, there are 3 schools that have identified that they would like to use the conflict center.
I guess I would argue that delaying their program impacts them, impacts the students, and we've seen the data in written form. I don't need to see it orally presented. I've seen the data in written form, so I will vote against the amendment.
I guess I would have a question. I know that IRP was not utilized by these schools because they elected to use the Georgia Conflict Center. If we table this discussion and a need arises for any type of restorative circle, will our district be able to service these 3 schools?
We would be able to provide those services to these 3 schools.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Any follow-up discussion?
So let me be clear, this motion originally was to approve the contract or something. I wasn't sure that. Okay, great, thank you.
I guess I'd just like to say that we were given wrong information last week, that there is no data, and there is a lot of data showing the success of these programs in these 3 schools, and unfortunately Danny Malik wasn't able to give us that data last week, but he gave it to us in written form by email, followed up with an email we just got this afternoon by 2 people from Clark Central High School who are glowing with praise for the impact of this program on their school, and I would hate to see it postponed for a month, given the school is underway.
I do tend to agree with Dr. Yeager on that.
I have a question. When I looked through this and I looked through the budgets, I'm personally am pro restorative justice, but if we approve this right now, are those budgets set in stone? Because I do have some questions about the discrepancy between Clark Central, Clark Middle School, and Whit Davis Elementary. Whit Davis Elementary is not getting served the way that the other 2 are, and that's in my district. I've personally seen it firsthand. So if we approve this, is that budget set in stone? That would be my only concern, is that I almost wish there was more funding also being put in our elementary version of this. If we're gonna see this to fruition, and we're gonna see it, the whole program working, I feel like we need to see it from all 3 schools. And there's a major discrepancy, budget-wise, between Whit Davis Elementary and Clark Middle and Clark Central.
I guess Mr. Schooneman could address whether they could do an amended.
I think I can address the first part of that, is that these contracts are contracts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Byron, that the schools have created for the services that they are requesting. So they are using their school funds to partner or contract with the Georgia Conflict Center. So this is what the principal of Whit Davis has asked for based on the needs of his school compared to the additional services that Clark Central and Cedar Shoals are asking for. That's why the budget is different.
So I'm sorry. So you're saying that Whit Davis is only requesting this amount coming out of their own budget?
That is my understanding. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Brandon.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to push back a little bit on seeing percentages on paper versus having a conversation about what those percentages represent to the teachers in the school, in the buildings. If we see, for example, that 40% of students, there's a 40% reduction in ISS and OSS, that really looks great on paper. However, if that translates to lack of classroom control for teachers because students are staying in the classroom rather than going somewhere else to handle their emotional trauma, then we need to hear that. And I don't think that we've had the opportunity to engage GCC on what those numbers really look like in the school buildings. I also don't think that we've had an opportunity to really have a discussion about the teachers in the schools and how they feel this has impacted. I love percentages, I'm a data person, but sometimes we also need to have a conversation about what the data actually looks like from a day-to-day, and we have not had that opportunity.
I think Dr. Yeager, actually, and then Dr. Dykeman, and I'll speak
I was just
last.
going to say the letter we got at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock from Grace Crumpton is teachers. Those are teachers at the school reporting on their experience. So it is teacher that data is coming from. I agree with just not going beyond what Mr. Malik gave us.
I was just going to agree with Dr. Yeager in the, I do think it would be great to have a presentation on what they're doing and how it's going, but I also think that delaying it 2 months where they can't do the work that they should be doing at the beginning of the school year is really going to impact the program and is possibly going to make it so that it's not as effective this year. So I feel like I get that we don't have as much information as we would like, but I don't want to take away something from the students and the teachers, something that was not directly their fault, that we don't have that information. So I would be in favor of continuing it this year so that they can get going on their work for this school year.
Okay.
Are we rounding out discussion or?
Yes, we have the motion on the table to table until November, and so we're still discussing that. Ms. Davis?
And so when I read the reports, and I read them all, I'd like to consider a compromise motion. I don't want to take away a support that is currently in our school if it's having some value, and it sounds like I'm hearing that we're having some value. I'm wondering if we could amend this to give them a month-to-month until we assess this in its entirety. I think it would be unreasonable for us to make a decision about GCC without looking and comparing that to what we're getting from IRT. This is where we started when we went down this path, and those schools opted out. And so I want to know, that was the whole purpose of allowing them to opt out, was to be able to see, are we making progress? To commit to a school for a 5-year period is excessive to me, and I would want us to look at the terms of this contract and this agreement. I don't think we should lock ourselves into 5 years of anything that isn't proven to us to be the thing of value. So that's my position.
I guess I would just remind us to all look at, when we look at the budgets for the 3 schools, that totals over $100,000. We have heard so much about position shortages, how we need to hire other people. I mean, there's a lot that can be done with $100,000, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be awarded to GCC. I'm all for restorative justice, but I do feel like if we're going to be good fiduciary members of this board, then we have to look at the data and make the decision before we spend that amount of money for anything, especially a program that we haven't reviewed the data on.
I was just going to mention, so this will be an item that I won't be voting on, but I do want to say from a perspective from a long time ago, just want to agree that it is important for kids, particularly children who are receiving these types of services, that sometimes it's just a tier 1 service and it's like preventive, sometimes it goes all the way up. And years and years ago, so I don't know if this is still the case, one of the frustrations I had is that things just stopped, right? They stopped. Sometimes there was not a connection between the schools and the district and policy, and the people that lose out on that are the children. And so when we walk into a school tomorrow and we need to have a restorative circle, or we need to have a mediation, or we need to be able to sit down with a person who has a clinical background of some sort, when we stop things in the middle of a school year, they do have implications for the children. I do agree that I think with really anything related to the large spectrum of discipline needs to be looked at with a finer eye. I think that's part of the board's role, right, to decide where we're gonna spend the money, but it's also the superintendent's, I think, responsibility as well to set that course and set what the expectations are across both programs, and then to decide what those outcomes are gonna be. And so I totally get, with the stats, there are things that may be missing, right? And even when you have the conversation, we still probably need to dig a little bit deeper to see, are these services predictive of a better quality experience for children, to go beyond like some of the descriptives. But I don't see that as exclusive work. I do see it as something that can be done. Not just, and this is not just saying that, oh, GGC has to do it, but I think for even with the other agency, I'm sorry, I can't remember, IIRB, I want to say IRB, but I just don't want our children to not have a resource, but I also recognize that we have to be good stewards of the things that we have. I just think we can do both and we're sort of in this space right now, if we're honest, where IRB, P, Georgia conflict, behavior specialists, mental health specialists, counselors, we really have to wrap our minds around, like, what is the impact and what is the overlap? And I know that that was something that, you all had mentioned. I would just hate to see with any support service at this time, not just Georgia conflict, but any support service to drop from the radar in September when we're entering into a month where October is normally one of the highest discipline months, for schools. And so just some thoughts to sort of, think about. I think it's a both and. I don't think one has to cancel out the other.
And just to clarify, because I think Ms. Davis said it was a 5-year contract. This is just a 1-year contract, correct? It just goes through.
I did have just a question. Do we know if Dr. Hooker's had any conversations about his position on this? You said something that resonated. We should be looking to the superintendent to set the charge to doing some of this work. So as we have our new superintendent coming in, do we know where he is with just restorative practices, period, in the district?
I have not asked that question, so I don't want to misrepresent. I have worked before with him, with other, with services and supports. And so I think I would be safe to say that it is a priority, but also looking at looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the outcomes. And not just the outcomes of descriptives, but is this predictive, right? Is it making a significant difference? I think he would be in support of services, in general, that help build, our wraparound capacity, and I think this would fit somewhere in there.
Dr. Scott has had a one-on-one with Dr. Hooker, so she may be able to speak to that as well.
Thank you. So I have had conversations with Dr. Hooker related to just some of the services that we are providing to address the whole child. And so I do know that, as you stated, Dr. Gann, it is a priority for him. I do know that it's something that he does want to be able to discuss very early on. He has not specifically stated to me that this is my stance on GCC versus IIRP, as much as give me a little bit more clarity around the two. And I also wanted to just provide a little bit of clarity also as it relates to IIRP and the schools that are choosing to use GCC. It's not that they're using it in replacement of. They are asking to use it while the IIRP training is taking place, because those 3 schools are actually a part of the pilot that Dr. Watley put together prior to her departure. So those 3 schools were listed as 3 schools that will be engaged in the IIRP work as well. So just wanted to provide just that little bit of clarity around that.
And if I may ask, Dr. Scott, that IIRP work is not fully rolled out quite yet, right?
It is not. So they are doing a series of different sessions. They did the first one back in January, and it's basically restorative practices for teachers. And so for those who actually went to it in January, they've received that training as well as the textbooks that go along with it, and we would hope that they are implementing those practices in their buildings. The second one that will be offered will be November 1st and 2nd. It's a replica of what was given in January, so people can choose if they want to go November 1st and 2nd, or if they want to go to the third one that will be offered November 29th and 30th, or 28th and 29th. And so each one of those is the same session offered repeated times to be able to fit people's schedule, and they're offered virtually. Beyond that, then they will actually offer some in-person training or coaching for schools based upon what we identify as the needs are for our schools, as far as coaching them in the work that they're doing. But then we'll do a train the trainer in March so that we are building the capacity of people within our district to then continue to train other people throughout the district. And that train the trainer is in person and it's for a full week.
That was really helpful for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we do have a motion on the table right now to.
I got a question. Just a
Oh,
clarifying
okay, I'm
question.
sorry about that.
It's just a clarifying question. So the 100,000 is not coming from a general fund or a separate pot that would take away from something else at the district. This money is coming from each one of these schools, and they're spending their own money. They're not asking for nothing extra. And then the schools are carrying the organization that is doing the work financially. So
Yes.
if they didn't pay them, they wouldn't be able to fiscally be able to do the work.
That is correct. The school is paying for the contracted work through their own school budgets.
I'm talking about the organization, not the contractor.
Oh, I did not understand that part of the question. Could you ask that again?
So the schools, with their funding, are carrying the organization as a whole.
I am not certain of the organization, the contracted organization's financial sovereignty. Is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm, basically.
I don't know. I could not speak to that.
We can't speak to it. Okay. But it's not coming from the school district, it's coming from each individual school, and they're gonna spend their own money. And it came to the board because the total is over $50,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and in conjunction to that, because I was a sitting LSGT member when Whit Davis chose to implement restorative justice, that is true. The LSGTs actually voted on this. They came up with it. It's their funds. They're the ones. So now that you're looking at it that way, it was a good clarifying question. It does. I think it is directly. Like, I think to answer your question, not that I'm authority, just because I sat on the LSGT, it is controlled solely by the school. Like, it is probably the $50,000 thing. That's where we're asked to.
So schools have independent funds outside of the allocation that they get for their FTEs and the dollars that are coming down. These are dollars that have already been allocated to the school. Can you explain that for me, Mr.
I'll do my best.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me, let me go back to Ms. Davis so we can be sure that we hear, and then we'll come back around if there's any additional information, and then we're gonna go ahead and take a vote on that, that motion that's on the table so we can move forward.
So my question was to Mr. Schooneman, do schools, when we say it's the school's funds, these are the funds that have been allocated to the school based on the budget they presented, right? Which made up our total budget, right? Or can you clarify that for me? Is there a separate pot of money that the school has discretion over that the board does not? Or, because I'm trying to understand how that could be.
Historically, for Georgia Conflict Center, there wasn't one specific funding source that paid for the services for the entire.
Can't hear you.
I got one hot mic and one mic that barely works. Okay.
Okay.
So historically, the funding for Georgia Conflict Center wasn't coming from one pot. It could have been the LSGT that put through an innovation that funded the Georgia Conflict Center at their school. It could have been a principal that emphasized using their consolidated Fund 150 to pay for it. What we did last year and what Jillian kind of spearheaded was an RFP process to have one vendor or one partner do the service district-wide. And I believe these three schools opted to continue their services with Georgia Conflict Center, and they are funding it, I believe, through Fund 150, which the board, it's still under their purview. In Fund 150, it's just a consolidation of general fund money and title money.
Okay. Dr. Anderson, can you speak in the mic if you, so that the.
I was just, I mean, it's the district's finance, it's the district's budget. So it's not money that was raised by the schools for them to do. It's money that was approved by our yearly budget to be allocated to the schools. So there's still a board's fiduciary responsibility to ensure that these funds are spent in a way that makes a difference to the kids, And we have not had a chance to engage anyone from GCC. This came up last year and was a hot topic last year. And so it just seems like every year that we blindly approve something without having an opportunity to engage the contractor and others in a conversation about the budget, about the impact that it's had in the schools, then we are, in my opinion, not engaging in our job to practice fiduciary responsibility. That's all that I'm saying.
Dr. Gant, I understand what Dr. Anderson is saying, and I'm frustrated on the flip side of that because I just think it's not right to do this to the children, because we have talked about this every year, but we have not set a schedule for evaluation so that in a timely fashion before we get to this point, we have heard from the organizations. And I just believe that doing it now is just not right to do that and then pull anything that's going on for the children. We don't know on either program what's going on, but to pull it and we don't have anything at all, I just think it's not fair at this time. I think maybe we set a schedule for next year and then you all take a vote, after you've had opportunity to hear from them. But now to do it, it just doesn't feel good to me to do that to the young people, to have services taken from them.
I'd like to call the vote.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor to postpone this action item until November. We have a second. We've had discussion. All in favor of postponing this action item until November, I think it was, right? Yep. Until November, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that is 4. All right. And all opposed, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Okay, that's 4. And I'm abstaining. And so I think that motion fails. Is that correct, Mr. Pruitt? All right, so we are back at this item, which is the Georgia Conflict Center. The floor is open for another motion.
I move that we negotiate a month-to-month contract until November, or until some resolution can come before this board that answers the questions that have been asked.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to negotiate a month-to-month contract until the board can hear from the Georgia Conflict Center, from Ms. Davis, and then we have a second from Ms. Hall. The floor is open. Yep, Mr. Gaskins.
So I think we need to ask a clarifying question if that is something that we can do. So the contract that we have presented to us is a yearly contract, and so we would need to go back to determine if the conflict center would like to have a month-to-month.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to that, Attorney Pruitt?
If someone can pass the microphone.
We're plagued with this problem.
That's probably why there's a bunch of feedback. Thank you. Yes, we'd have to do that. The other question I was wondering is, when you say negotiate, does that mean it would have to come back to the board before it would be put in effect? Because then you'd be approving it in October for just 1 month. Or do you anticipate that the superintendent could approve that up to her $50,000 spending limit?
I'm going to start with Ms. Davis, since the motion was yours.
So I will totally not take away anything from the superintendent's authority to approve a less than $50,000 contract. And if that is her desire, then so be it.
Okay, so it sounds like the motion is perhaps to postpone and authorize the superintendent to negotiate and enter into a month-to-month contract with GCC
up to the superintendent's spending authority.
I like that.
So let me be sure I understand that. The motion is to postpone the approval of this contract tonight and to authorize the superintendent to enter into month-to-month contracts
Up to her spending limit.
up to the 50,000.
We should be able to do that.
So that sort of sounds like it's, okay, but Dr. Dykeman?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know exactly how this works, but I feel like this is a whole year program. And so to authorize it for maybe 2 months until we can hear more about it, and then what are we going to do? What if we decide we don't want it? Then there's work that has been done that has not had an outcome. Or there's a lot of work that might need to be done on the front end, and then all this work is done, and then it's stopped. So I feel like, I mean, while I would rather have it month to month than not at all, I feel like going month to month with the possibility of not seeing it through for a year maybe doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Let's start with Ms. Hall, and then
So hypothetically, so I'll make sure I'm clear on how I want to vote. Hypothetically, if this board were to not take action on this tonight, and GCC, or we voted it down, we voted the contract down tonight, if GCC still came back and presented it in November, they could still approach the board to then approve the contract at any time, correct? This isn't a one and done, is it, or is it?
So I would imagine, yes, if the board voted it down, we could bring it back to the board again for approval.
That did answer my question, thank you. So just to clarify, because I want to make sure I'm clear on whether the work would stop. The work that GCC is doing would stop, but there would still be the other program at the district. They're not ready to roll out the training model, or they can't provide any services? Because people have been trained to provide this, correct? Because I was in one of the trainings, so the answer is yes. They've been trained to provide it, but would they be able to provide it to those 3 schools? Because I thought the answer was yes earlier.
So are you asking if there's someone at the district level that would be prepared to support the schools around any restorative circles that they would need to have?
If Whit Davis called
Yes.
your office in a crisis saying, we need a restorative circle right now, there's no approved contract, how would the district handle that?
So there are individuals within the district who have gone through the training who would be able to support them.
Thank you.
with those individuals, is there capacity though? Like, you know, like when you've been trained and you can do it, is that a part of their, you know, are they then deployed to, let's say, just say Clark Middle, right? If there is something that comes up, then is there a team of people, or do those people already exist at Clark Middle? Like, where do they, how do they work? What does this, you know, what does it look like?
I don't know that I can speak to whether there's the capacity to handle it, not knowing like how large, when we're talking capacity, then how large are we talking, like to need an exceptionally large number of people at any one given time, but also recognizing that there are people within schools that have been trained as well, whether it be through IIRP or GCC, that can also continue to help to support the work.
And those people, Dr. Scott, they have other like they are a part of the staff at those schools. For instance,
Yes.
like teachers, yeah, they have other responsibilities.
Yes, administrators, counselors, teachers, they would have other responsibilities as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have a motion on the table, and what I understand the motion to be is to, oh, did I miss something? Oh, Heidi, sorry.
I'm thinking. Well, Because I believe, I agree with Dr. Maddox on this. Like, I don't understand why we're voting on something that hasn't been presented already. I hear your words. But I also am really torn because these kids are going to lose this. They're going to lose the ability to have what's been happening. I'm sitting, this is personal, maybe I shouldn't bring it up, but I'm sitting here looking at the emails we've gotten from Clark Central and the teachers that have said what they've said. And then I'm looking at what I've heard from people who have talked to me about Whit Davis, and I brought it up, there's a discrepancy financially. Clearly, it's what's happening in Clark Middle from the emails we're getting and Clark Central. This support seems to be working in a way that maybe I'm not seeing it with Davis. If we're going to take away this funding, I hear your words. We're taking away, like, what are we doing here? Should we just sit for a second? Like, is this the right move to make? I understand that we need more information. I'm really not sure why it hasn't been presented. Maybe we could split the difference. Is there any way we could have this information presented to us sooner than November 2nd? Is there any way, if that is what is holding this up, is there some way we can call some sort of meeting where we do actually sit with the conflict center and ask the questions that we need to ask? That's not, obviously they're not here tonight, but without shooting down the entire idea.
All right, so technically, yes, the board can have a call meeting with people that request a call meeting in writing. I think it's 4, according to policy, or the superintendent can set a call meeting, or I think the president. And so to sort of answer your question about whether that's possible, sure, it is definitely possible. Ms. Davis, and then we're gonna, we still have a motion that doesn't have a second.
I'm ready for us to move forward. So again, my motion was, the whole purpose of my motion was to not force a decision to interrupt services while we are waiting to find out exactly, and I'm not sure at this point where we're going with the whole process between IRT and GCC. Is this going to be a relationship that goes forward down those separate paths, but again, moving toward the same direction? I want to be able to evaluate these 2 programs as like programs, or again, trying to drive the correct outcome or the outcome that we're looking for. And I don't think GCC can give us that. I think that's the district looking at the 2 and sharing with us, where are we on this continuum of care that allows us to build the capacity in all of the schools. The motion that I made was simply to say, don't cut off funding tomorrow because we voted down tonight. Continue paying and negotiate as we do this due diligence. We've asked for this not just this year, so we know that it's time for it to come up and to have that definitive discussion about it. But again, we did vote for the contract that was issued that gave us capacity. And so we need to make a decision on, can we live with the 2 of them, or are we going to eventually go to RTI? What is the plan? Because if we know what the plan is, then we know what our vote should be. And I'm having trouble voting for this without some discussion of the plan and how the plan is progressing based on what was presented to us when we approved that agency.
Okay.
That's where I live.
Sure, thank you. Dr. Yeager?
I was just going to say, and we talked a little bit about that at the meeting last week, Linda, and I'm not sure how well it came across on the video, but what we heard from Dr. Thomas was that we will not be able to do that for a year because of what happened last year with the IRB. So we are not going to be able to do that comparison until a year from now, is what she said. Did I understand that correctly?
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Thank you, Dr. Yeager. We do have a motion on the table to postpone the votes on, postpone approving the contract, but authorize the superintendent to handle month-to-month to negotiate the month-to-month contract. That's the motion. Is there a second? Did you, oh, okay, and Ms. Hall made a second. We're going to take a vote, okay? All in favor of the motion to postpone and authorize the superintendent to negotiate month to month within that $50,000 discretion, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
You good?
What was that? Okay, so was it 4 or 5? Can you raise your hands and say aye again?
Aye.
Okay, we have 4, and then those opposed, the same signs. All right, we have 4, and those abstaining, 1, me. Okay, so that motion fails again. So we're back at the this item of the Georgia Conflict Center.
I move that we vote to approve the conflict for the
Second.
Georgia Conflict Center.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Hall to approve and a second by Dr. Maddox. Any follow-up conversation before we take the vote?
Did we just go back to the beginning? Okay.
All right, all in favor of approving the Georgia Conflict Center contracts here, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
4, 5, okay. All opposed, the same signs? Okay, 3. And abstaining is me, Ms. Palmer. So, okay, so that was 5, 3, and 1 abstention. All right, so that motion passes. We'll move forward to the CTAE Local Improvement Plan. The floor is open for a motion.
I move that we approve the CTAE Local Improvement Plan.
Okay.
Second. I forgot what we
All
were
right.
doing.
We have a motion from Ms. Hall, a second from Dr. Dykeman. Floor is open for any questions or comments. All in favor of approving the CTAE Local Improvement Plan, if you would, raise your hands and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same signs? Okay. Okay, so that motion passes, Ms. Palmer, 8-1. We'll move forward to item C, and this is our Personnel Board Addendum.
I move that we vote to adopt the Personnel Board Addendum.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hull, a second by Dr. Yeager. Follow-up questions or concerns or conversation?
I will not be voting on this motion simply because I did not review the addendum.
All right. Okay, so all in favor of approving the Personnel Board Addendum, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign. And abstention, Ms. Davis? Okay. All right, and our last item under 8 is our Local Board of Education Training Plan for FY23. This is something that Ms. Palmer sent out. Each year, we have to submit a plan. Dr. Anderson and I talked about this briefly, and so if you look at the plan, it has the amount of hours that we need and that we plan on getting. These trainings have not been set in stone yet, but I do want you to go ahead and sort of flag this general area. So you see where it's like we have a December workshop, a spring workshop, and we could possibly count or add on to the work that we're already going to be doing with norms. We can add some additional hours onto that, and then there's a summer workshop. And so one of the things that we discussed is with Dr. Hooker is looking at, he had some ideas as well, and looking at just some options for training for people that are approved. These hours have to be, these are the ones that have to be approved by the State Board of Education. And so there's a certain amount of hours that we each will have to have, as well as our new members will have to have. But just wanted to be sure you were aware of this and be on the lookout as we have more details and solidify plans. We'll reach out to you.
I was just going to note that there's a typo in the lower right cell.
Did you say the lower right one?
The June 2023.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you see it? It says worship, not worship.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
You got us covered. That's right. Thank you. Hallelujah.
I saw another hand. Ms. Davis? Okay, so we have a motion for Ms. Davis, and was that a second for Ms. Hull? Yes. All right, any follow-up questions or conversation? All in favor of approving the Local Board of Education training plan, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same signs. Okay, so that motion carries 9-0. We are at adjournment. The floor is open for a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Dr. Maddox and Ms. Hull. Okay, seeing that there are no objections, we are adjourned at 7:19 p.m.
Thank you. Wow.